Thank you very much. So Amy and I are really excited to be able to be here today to tell our story, kind of the evolution of what has now become 9 United. So Joyce and Kristen asked us today to talk a little bit about the impact that we feel that we're making and that we hope we're helping to grow leaders in service and help them go forth and make an impact in service in their lives. So what Amy and I really realized early on is this is not rocket science. What we're going to talk about today, you all, if you're a kind, caring, empathetic person, you too know that we are pretty much built to serve. And what Amy and I found was that there weren't that many opportunities out there for our kids and our families to serve. And over the last 8 years, we have now evolved to become what we believe to be a service-centered, servant leader, service leadership organization, nonprofit. So the question is, how do you build these lifelong service leaders? That's really what we kind of wanted to talk about today. And how do you grow them so that they will make an impact? And that's really what our story is all about. We realized pretty quickly that if we were going to do this, we needed to have some kind of a mission. Because for the first 8 years, we were flying by the seat of our pants. And so we had some others that were seeing what was happening and what was growing and saying, you guys need to settle in with some kind of a mission and work toward that mission and live in that mission. So this is kind of where we've landed. We believe that this is constantly evolving, and as we read it today, it really is already changing. But our primary mission is that we want to provide students and families of Forest Hill School District with authentic service opportunities that impact the lives of fellow students, their families, their neighbors, and the community as a whole. I say that's already evolving because we're actually going outside now of just the Forest Hill School District. So people in the school district are also involved in other community organizations that and things are growing, and we like to call that the ripple effect. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but so we know we're making an impact. Over the last 8 years, this has really grown very organically. Because of that basic principle that we're built to serve. And I think that because people want to serve, they want to be in service. And so we all know that we need to serve too. There's kind of that itch, especially as a parent, that we know that we should all be in service. It also grew really authentically from a need and a want. We, as parents, we knew that our kids were darling, love them, but a little overindulged, possibly starting to say some things that seemed as if they might be a little entitled. That to me was like, I gotta nip this right now, you know, and how do you kind of go about doing that? So that need was definitely there, and we weren't the only ones feeling it. There was lots of parents that were talking to us about needing that to happen. There was also, we found a need in our community for actual to be served. People needed to be served. So how could we build on that need and that want? So we have said a million times, if you build it, they will come. And that is what has happened. This isn't, like I said earlier, rocket science, and all we're trying to do is build it, and everything we build, people just keep coming. So it's really a great thing. What we realize then, if all these people are going to come, we better be very intentional about what we build. And with that, we had to have some hard conversations about what does it really look like and sound like to be an authentic service? What does service look like if all these people are going to entrust in us that this is an authentic service opportunity? What are those benchmarks? What does it really look like? Okay, so we learned a lot that in this community that people are hungry for service. We're fortunate. Those of you that live in Anderson Township know we live with a lot more haves than we do have-nots. And so it's important, we realize, for our kids to know that they have to appreciate all that they have. That was one thing that was really important to us. And that they have to see the other side. How are we in this affluent community going to see the have-nots when we live in this community with so many haves? And that we all do have a responsibility to give back. So how do we try to help our kids to see that? The opportunities that were out there in the community at the time didn't really seem to be filling our buckets. We kind of have grouped them into, when I was looking for opportunities for my kids to serve, I call it buy, bag, and drop. So I don't know any of you that are moms or dads that have helped their kids with the service project at school. You go to the store, You buy the stuff, you put it in a bag, you put it in their backpack, listen to them complain about how heavy their backpack is, and then they take it to school, and all they do is you tell them where to drop it, and they have to put it in some bucket outside some teacher's room, and then they have to drop it. So buy, bag, and drop. And we talked a lot about where's the impact for the kids? Where's the engagement? Where's that intentional engagement from the kids? It really wasn't there. The other thing was that was available to us was like, go to the soup kitchen. You can go downtown, you can go over the Rhine, we can go to the soup kitchen. What a great idea. I'm not trying to downplay that idea at all, but we weren't ready for that. At the time I was really looking at this, I had a first grader and a fourth grader. We weren't really ready to go down to the soup kitchen yet. And it seemed very dramatic. There was gonna have to be a lot of life lessons and a lot of conversations. And it just seemed like there had to be another way that our family could serve without it having to be maybe quite so dramatic. The only kids I was seeing serve also were, when I was asking what other kids were doing, were high school kids. High school kids were serving, but our little kids were not serving. So why were they serving? Because they had to serve. Those of you that have high schoolers know, National Honor Society, Key Club, you have to have a certain number of hours to serve. So we were finding that kids had to serve, and that's why they were serving, not because it was inherent and intrinsic and that they wanted to serve. So we were trying to come up with a way to get kids to want to serve before they had to serve, and then hoping that then they would forever serve. That was kind of our hope. If we wait till they have to serve, it's probably going to be too late, because then they're just checking that box. All right, so in trying to kind of come up with what that was going to look like, we realized we really did have some pretty clear expectations on what it looks like to be in authentic service. And number one was that it needed to be barrier-free. So some of those examples that I gave before about buy, bag, and drop. If I don't have enough money to go to the store or time to go to the store to buy those products, that's a barrier. I cannot be involved in that project. If I can't take a week off of work, I can't go on the mission trip. That's a barrier. If I can't drive downtown to the soup kitchen, that's a barrier. So we talked a little bit about that and trying to figure out, how do you build something that's barrier-free, that provides multiple opportunities for kids and families to get involved. They can use their time, their talent, their treasure, any of that exclusively or all of it together. That's what we were trying to build. So we wanted to be intentional about that. The second thing was that it needed to be developmentally appropriate. So if you have little kids, how can they serve and see what it looks like and sounds like to serve when they're little? And again, I couldn't find anything out there that seemed to be developmentally appropriate. We also know, again, not rocket science, but if we serve together in our community, with our community, and for our community, we're going to make a greater impact. Just the sheer fact that we're working together towards a common goal, it's going to end better. It's going to be great. And not only that, but we're modeling for our kids that this is how you make a difference. You work in your community with others in your community, and that you're working for a common goal in your community. So that was kind of where we landed on. We do have some pretty clear expectations about what it looks like and sounds like to be in service. And if we're going to build this for people to come, we need to make sure that we stay true to our mission and that we stay true to these things. The pebble in the pond effect is kind of the underlying bubbling thing Amy and I always talk about every time we build something. Is there going to be a ripple effect? Because many of us can do something like buy, bag, and drop, and it's more like the analogy of chucking the pebble into the pond and it just sinks. There's really no impact. What we want to build is when you put that pebble, there's several ripple effects. We want kids to walk away more engaged. We want kids to want to come back. We want kids to have internalized what they learned something from that. All those feelings, because they were a part of the process from the beginning to the end. So that's kind of where we're trying to stay true to what we believe to be those benchmarks. But we're going to move on to this, and really the only other thing that I wanted to add is that all of that being said, we really don't have any hard data that this is working. We really don't. But what we do have is 8 years of building what some of you maybe have heard of is called Shop and Share, which is that's definitely our flagship event. That's why this whole thing started, because it kept evolving and growing over the years. It started out with, at the beginning, when I had that first grader and that fourth grader, me looking for an opportunity to have my kids serve. So I called up Beach Acres and asked them if I could adopt a family from Beach Acres. And they gave me a list, and I went with my kids, kicking and screaming, to Target, and we shopped for a family there so that my kids could see what it looked like to be on that other side. They could be involved in the process from the beginning to the end. And that has now evolved 8 years later into, it's hard to even describe what has happened in between, because I know, we're on a time crunch, but we are now to the point where it started out as me, one person. It evolved to 10 or so of my peeps that also wanted to come to Target and shop with me. We got lists for them. They shopped, had a great experience. Then I started thinking I was building something that actually had a barrier. Because if you didn't have an extra couple $100s at Christmas, you couldn't participate in what I had built. So it wasn't barrier free. So then we started evolving to, what if we go into the schools and have kids all participate together, collect nickels, dimes, pennies, and quarters, and see if together we can all adopt maybe one family. And trying to eliminate some of those barriers and making it developmentally appropriate for those kids. And we did that. We did it at Wilson. That was where my kids were. Then we moved to Nagel. Then we moved to Summit. Then we moved to Air. Then now, 8 years later, we now have a full-blown, all-in, all 9 schools are participating. We are gathering donations and adopting over 400 families. In the last 2 years, which has just really been remarkable. And again, I say this isn't rocket science, because it really all started with me sending one email to a couple of my friends saying, hey, you guys want to do this? And then it has just evolved from there. So do we have hard data that it's working? Do we have hard data that we're making an impact? What we know is that families in Anderson Township and families in this community want to be a part of what we're doing. And so that in and of itself is an impact. This past year, we've engaged some high school leaders that are very service-minded at both of the high schools. They now are leading Shop and Share. So they now are in charge of it. Amy and I have taken on much more of a mentorship role in what it looks like and sounds like to be leaders in service. And so that has just been amazing, to the point that a couple of weeks ago, we have the kids in this group now asking us to write their college recommendation letters.
What we wanted to do was we wanted to underlying grow students who have been impacted by acts of service, either as service leaders or as a recipient of an United project, an identity of being a service leader that they can use to make an impact wherever life may take them. So they drop the pebble here. The pebble stays here in Anderson Township, but the ripple they carry with them. That's what we're trying to build with 9 United. Jen, you can go on the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
It's all my job. One slide.
So my passion is creating benchmarks and having hard skills, tools that you can take with you in life. That's what gets me up in the morning. So one of the benchmarks that we have is that we want our high schoolers to lead with confidence. They have really great ideas that our world of social media has made them very, very afraid to share. And so we are encourage the sharing and exploration of their ideas. They come to us and say, hey, I have a thing. And sometimes we are like, awesome. And sometimes we're like, not gonna hit the mark. I'll talk about one that didn't hit the mark in a moment, but one that we are doing right now that is awesome was one of our seniors at Turpin came to us actually before the end of the last school year. And she kind of hemmed and hawed, and she's like, I got this thing. Da, da, da. And Jen finally said, Sophie, spit it out. What do you got? And she said, I was wondering about kids who don't have birthday cakes. Like, what happens to kids who don't have birthday cakes? And she said, I just celebrated my birthday, and I had 4. I had one at my grandma's, and I had one here at school, and I had the cookie cake with my friends, and what happens to kids that don't have birthday cakes? And we said, we don't know, but let's make some phone calls. So Jim Jenkins is a friend of ours, and so we called him, and he said he's the director at St. Joe's Orphanage, and he said, Bunny, you should ask, because Kroger just ended their partnership with us to provide birthday cakes. And we were like, awesome, can we provide you birthday cakes? And he said, sure. And we said, however, you gotta do it our way. They have to be active in their birthday cake. So we're not gonna bring you a cake. We're gonna bring you the ingredients, and they're gonna mentor with an adult what it looks like to make their cake. And then we're gonna give them a $25 Target gift card, and they can go out and buy themselves a birthday present, or somebody else can go out and buy them a birthday present. So birthday bundles is off and running. We've been doing it since June. I believe we are at somewhere around 70 kids who would not normally have birthday cakes are getting birthday cakes.